Heidi. Oh, I'm back. I know last video I said I wanted to do this pretty much immediately after that. Like, I didn't want there to be a big break because I wanted to cover chapter 1100 in that video, like, the week it came out. But, stuff happens. I got busy doing other stuff. Yeah. So, we're not really going to fluff around it again. Work has been work. I'm running a D&D campaign. I am in a D&D campaign with another friend of mine. Yeah, things are looking progressive. But speaking of progressive, chapter 1099 of One Piece, also known as Pacifist. That'll come back into play at the last section of the chapter, trust me. So, we're going to do the normal thing where I pause recording, read the chapter, come back, give my 2 cents, rinse and repeat. But I've already read this chapter. I'm coming in prepared. So, chapter starts off right where 1098 left off, with Kuma going against the king. The king whose name is Bikori. So Kuma is trying to protect people from the burning of the village that Bikori has started, because Bikori views that as the only way to get the kingdom to be prosperous and wealth-filled. And Kuma runs what will be known as the one-man revolution. And all of Kuma's trusted confidants, I guess, are tending to the wounded, and Bonnie sees Kuma use a massive Ursa shock to destroy the castle. And then, on an ongoing thing that I think will have actual it's gonna be a big thing, we cut to Jupiter getting an update on Sorbet, and how Kuma has become the new king, and this isn't the only time we'll see the old man. So, we find out that Kuma became the king, but he continues to live in the rundown church. But he's more just a figurehead for Bulldog, the old king. And everyone is lamenting that, Bulldog, when Bulldog was here, we were all kind of poor and maybe a little, we weren't the best off, but, we felt good. And then we see Bonnie, or what is Bonnie, but she's aged up. So, off-screen, I guess, she ate the age fruit, and now she's the Bonnie we know. She's like 20-ish looking. But everyone's shocked. She didn't even know she ate a devil fruit. And she tries to use her powers on other people, and she does, but she has a little issue using it on herself. And Bulldog shows up and shows everyone that Bikori has ran a propaganda spew through the news, calling Kuma the tyrant king of Sorbet, and says that Kuma was the one that burnt down all the villages and stuff, and that all of his battleships are already on standby, more than likely. And Kuma says that he will not allow Bikori to step 1 foot onto Sorbet's soil. So what they do is Kuma leaves Bonnie in the trust of everyone else, again, Sorbet, and he goes off on one ship and destroys the entire armada. And this gives him his very first bounty. So he is officially then branded as a pirate. And Bonnie, we get a cut of Bonnie saying that she misses her dad and that she doesn't care if he's becoming a hero. He was her dad first. And that's just really touching. Like, just straight up, it's just touching. And she laments that she's going to be cured after she turns 10, and she's going to become a pirate after that. And Kuma goes country to country, place to place, asking if somebody knows how to cure this. He goes to a few familiar locations, fights a few pirates, but in particular, we see him go to the country that Robin was sent during time skip, where Nami was sent, and where Usopp was sent. I think the other one is where somebody else was sent, but I am unsure. This is going to play in later, because I do know what happens in a few chapters. So, he runs across the revolutionaries while on the sea, and him and Dragon catch up that Eva and Inazuma got sent to prison. Again, we know what they are doing in Impel Down. And we see that Bello Betty is younger, has longer hair, and it's only due to Kuma's blessing that she's allowed to become the commander of the Eastern Forces, which was the title formerly held by Ginny. And Dragon says that Sabo and Koala both wanted to see him, but Kuma's timing was just bad. And Kuma says that once he cures Bonnie, he will rejoin the revolutionaries. And Dragon says a line that I think is massive, just for theory crafting. Go where the winds of fate take you, my friend. Obviously, Dragon is a big question mark as to what his power is. Everyone's kind of speculated to be like the wind fruit, the weather fruit, the Kame no Mi, or the Kaze no Mi, I think it would be. But, yeah, this line is just kind of tickling that. And I know Oda knows what he's doing. Oda has admitted that he himself consumes One Piece fandom stuff, So we cut back to Sorbet, and we see Bonnie welcoming Kuma home, because during him and Dragon's conversation, Dragon told him about Vegapunk, who is switching laboratories, and the security around him should be a little lax. So Kuma shows up, and he's there to get Bonnie cured. And first of all, Mr. Egghead Vegapunk notices that Kuma is built different. And he is talking about what he wants to do to cure Bonnie. And he says that the cost comparison is like turning her into a cyborg. And then he looks at the blood results and sees that Kuma is a buccaneer. Obviously, this was like 20-ish to 40-ish years ago that the whole buccaneer race got fucking obliterated. So, yeah, it's going to be a big thing. And Vegapunk even says, I work for the government, right? And Kuma asks why his blood is so special and that he trusts Dragon. And Vegapunk offers a deal that Kuma gives some of his blood so that Vegapunk can use it for his clone army that he wants to build, and that Vegapunk will waive all the costs of Bonnie's treatment. Sounds like a fairly fair deal, especially when Vegapunk sells it that his clones are going to deflect bullets. They're going to be so sturdy they can deflect bullets, and they'll be heroes that protect the weak and the helpless. If only I could get them to fire lasers too, those pirates would be scared speechless. In the face of devastating scientific power, evildoers have no choice but to submit. So, Vegapunk's entire reasoning for making the pacifistas, which will be named later on, is to scare the pirates into submission. Not kill them, just to scare them into not knowing what else to do. Which is actually kind of a calm way of doing it. So, Kuma just straight up tells Vegapunk that Dragon had said that he's eccentric and trustworthy. And Kuma says that if clones of me end up saving people someday, maybe I can view that as a good reason for why I was born. And Vegapunk even admits Dragon won't be happy about this, but Kuma says, it's okay, I have nothing but gratitude for the both of you. Honestly, if it'd cured Bonnie, I would have made a deal with the devil himself. Please just save her. And Vegapunk calls him quite the saint. Speaking of saint, we are cutting back to Saint Charlos. Not Saint Charlos, I'm joking. We're cutting back to Jupiter. And he's lamenting that a weapon's worth is defined by how many people it can kill. Vegapunk is a fool for not making the most of this chance. Sorry, I'm yawning. Vegapunk is a fool for not making the most of this chance, no matter I have my own ideas. Which we can only theorize for this chapter. But, we see Kuma's response to the pacifist line. To me, a saint? Don't be silly. I'm just a spineless pacifist. Of course I love keeping the peace. And Vegapunk tells him, keeping the peace, eh? I like the sound of that. Why don't we call them the Pacifista? With the end of chapter text saying they only wanted peace. And oh boy, we know how that goes. So, this chapter, really, really good. It's a good transitionary chapter from what was happening in the previous to what is going to happen in the series that we know of. Again, we see Kuma visiting some familiar locations. We see him talking to Vegapunk. This is before Vegapunk had the brain transplant into the apple. So, It's all this big setup stuff. And I like the teasing of turning her into a cyborg, because that's exactly what he's going to end up doing to Kuma, obviously. But we know that Bonnie says that Jupiter is the one that turned her dad into a cyborg. So whatever Jupiter's planning obviously isn't going to be cut and dry. It's not going to just be this Vegapunk makes a deal with Kuma and it's all good. There's going to be a complicating factor. So, after that, let's cut to chapter 1100. And chapter 1100 is titled, Thank You, Bonnie. So, this chapter, again, picks up right where the other one left off. We have a little bit of a time skip, but, Kizaru shows up. And he tells Vegapunk, like, you do realize we had this place surveyed, and we know that you're making a deal with a pirate. But, before we continue on with that, because that is the main section this early on, we get to see a young ex-Drake in Borsalino's crew on what would soon become Egghead. Just a cool note. That's it. But, Jupiter is through a Denden Mushi. And he has 3 conditions for everything that happened. For Vegapunk to be able to use him as the base for the clone army and for Vegapunk to cure Bonnie. Number 1, Kuma has to become a warlord. We knew this was a thing that had to happen because he is a warlord. But it turns out that they have to do it because a few days ago they find themselves a member short thanks to the exploits of a young rookie named Ace. My boy is in this chapter. But they need a warlord to help calm down the sea. The second condition is that Kuma needs to become a weapon, just like the clones that Vegapunk wants to create. So he's going to be enhanced through his body. And the third one is that he has to give up his free will and his sense of individuality, which is a massive one. As Vegapunk straight up says, Saint Saturn, that would be tantamount to killing him. This is because none of the other warlords follow orders, isn't it? If you snuff out all the humanity left in a cyborg, you'll have nothing left but a robot. Do you really expect me to murder a man? And Saturn just tells him, yeah, I do. He's a criminal. He has to. And Vegapunk continues to say, this is murder. It'd be perverse to fight a human like that. I won't. But Kuma tells him, please do it. I've been worrying all this time, thinking it might be impossible to save Bonnie. So I'm grateful. I'll happily accept any fate, as long as Bonnie is cured. And Kuma cries. Vegapunk cries. Borsalino covers his face with his hat. And Jupiter's Denden just looks on with what I can only assume to be disinterest or disdain. So Jupiter then asks Vegapunk, how long will it take you to finish Kuma's modifications and to cure his daughter? Dealing with the sapphire scales will take 6 months, but it'll take an extra year for her to be able to be exposed to natural sunlight. That's 1.5 years for her, and Kuma's modifications will take 2 years at minimum. And Kuma cries and again laments that she'll finally be okay before her 10th birthday, which is a promise he made for nothing other than just wanting her to be happy. But there's more conditions. They want to set up a precaution that Kuma cannot run away with Bonnie after she's cured. And they do that by immediately taking Bonnie away from Kuma once she's cured. And again, Vegapunk is the voice of reason. That would mean Kuma can't see Bonnie after she's cured. And Jupiter doesn't care. He even makes the threat, if there is any hint of defiance from any of you, I guarantee she'll spend the rest of her life as a slave. Which, how Kuma grew up, Bonnie grew up, or how Kuma grew up, how Ginny grew up, how some of his closest friends, being Eva included, grew up. He wouldn't wish that on anyone. And he says that he will not try to save her, he swears, but he only has one request, that Bonnie not know the truth, that she doesn't know about her illness, and that she doesn't know that she's being used as a hostage. And he also requests that instead of taking her to some sterilized, soulless government facility, that she be brought back to the church on Sorbet. And Jupiter says, Kuma says, if you can grant that one request, then I promise you I won't seek her out and I'll obey without question. And Jupiter says, very well. It makes no difference where she's kept as long as the government oversees it. Looks like we have an interesting 2 years ahead of us. And Kuma tells Bonnie that for the next 6 months they'll be staying at what would be Egghead. This is Egghead Island. And he introduces Sentomaru to Bonnie, and they just become a family, I would say. Vegapunk has this brain-exploding amount of ideas that he needs someone else to do all this stuff for. He basically talks about making the 5 other versions of himself. And we see that Kuma's starting to undergo his procedures to become a cyborg, and that Bonnie's undergoing her procedures to be cured. And again, through that, we see Sentomaru is giving Bonnie piggyback rides. Bonnie's drawing pictures of Kuma. Kuma and Bonnie are sleeping in the same bed. Actually, Bonnie is sleeping on Kuma. And there's these tanks of liquid that just have some medical use. And a Summit cargo ship shows up just with supplies. And Kuma and Bonnie are being friendly with the crew. And then they all have a feast, being Vegapunk, Sentomaru, Kuma, Bonnie, and Borsalino. And what I can only assume to be a prototype version of Shaka, probably. And they look like a family. They start dancing around to what I can only assume to be, it's not even to what I can assume, it's to the Drums of Liberation. And half a year later, the results are good. Bonnie is cured, and she just needs her 1 year of rehabilitation. And they take her to Sorbet. And they leave Bonnie again in the hands of Kuma's trusted comrades, but mostly Queen Dowager Connie, who was the one that was brought up last chapter, that she would become the kind of new head of the country. And also, if you remember back to the Sabaody arc, the first Sabaody arc, Bonnie takes the appearance of Connie, an old short woman, and that's how she saves Zoro. So it's just a cool note to see that. And Kuma says that he will leave her into everyone else's hands, and that he will write her a ton of letters. And that the next time he sees her, they'll be able to reach the horizon, travel all sorts of places. But Kuma knows he really would love that, but he can't. And just to drive that knife in a little deeper, a Cypherpole agent shows up under CP8, and her name is Alpha. And she's taking the guise of a nurse who was positioned there to make sure Bonnie's okay, but she's really there as a threat to Kuma, that she will just kill Bonnie. And it's already not looking good, because they are they are putting up a building for the Navy's accommodations during this. So they're putting it right in front of the church too, so already the Navy seems to be kind of annexing part of Sorbet, which does not bode well for this kingdom period. And Kuma, knowing that this is the last time he's going to see his daughter as he is, tells her, "Thank you, Bonnie. I'm so glad you were born." Which is so touching. And then we get to see what is genuinely one of the most interesting parts of a chapter, in my opinion, that we've gotten to see for a while. Don't get me wrong, I've loved the chapters winging. I love the Kuma flashback. I love the stuff happening with Jupiter on Egghead. But this, right here, the pirates of the world were utterly shocked when the infamous tyrant Bartholomew Kuma suddenly became an absolutely obedient member of the Seven Warlords. Doflamingo just views this as another villain coming into play. Crocodile could give a fuck less and asks if Robin has killed the people he needs killed. Mihawk looks at this while just destruction behind him. Alvida asks Koby who's stronger, her or Kuma, and Koby, being how he was, says Alvida. Ace, Whitebeard, Teach, Jinbei, and Marco look at this. And Ace says that they finally found a replacement and that it's great news. And we just get to see the Whitebeard crew's reaction, including Blackbeard. And Jinbei says he's a former king. This is on top of the reigning king we already have in our ranks. The pirate world really is changing, and obviously in context of Doflamingo. And then we see that Hancock doesn't care and that they will follow no man's orders. And Gecko Moria and Perona just seemingly don't care because he's not quite frightening. But the really interesting one is the revolutionaries, i.e. Sabo, Koala, and Hack. So this is a fairly old Sabo, just probably a few years before Luffy set sail. And they lament the fact that Kuma would never work for them because warlords answer directly to the government. And Kuma's writing a letter to Bonnie saying, "Dear Bonnie, I'm still at sea as I write this. I've become quite well known, and it's getting harder and harder to sail in peace. But I'm doing okay. I'm doing my best to find interesting places for you to travel when you turn 10. I hope everyone back home is doing as well as I am." And then we see that Kuma is in the East Blue, and he's going towards Windmill Village, the home of one Monkey D. Luffy, the man who is going to become king of the pirates. And it's going to be interesting, these next few chapters. But like I said, this chapter is really interesting because we get to see everyone's reactions to Kuma becoming a warlord. We get to see the build up to that. We get to see how Jupiter is able to push Kuma to that. And we get to see that, again, Kuma's just a nice guy. He's a good father, and he'll do anything for his child. I have a feeling that stuff on Sorbet is not going to go well. But yeah, this chapter was really just what was there was there. It was a massive chapter. It's chapter 1100. Oda always knows how to make the big 100 chapter marks feel big. Chapter 10 or 1000 was Red Rock. So, I mean, yeah, he knows how he's doing this. He's been doing this for a while. So, yeah, good, really good chapter. I love the setup again. This entire flashback, not in a bad way, but this flashback just screams setup, which, again, like I said just 10 seconds ago, isn't bad. But it really shows that Oda knows his way around his series. But yeah, that is chapter 1100 of One Piece. That is my review, my first reading of it. And I guess let's just go to chapter 1101. Chapter 1101. Named Dear Bonnie. We start the chapter with Kuma on Windmill Island, or specifically the Kingdom of Goa, East Blue, seeing Luffy use Gum Gum Axe. And Kuma watches on from a distance, remembering a time years ago that Kuma seemed to notice something. Dragon seemed familiar with this island. Not only that, but when Kuma noticed that Dragon snuck off to the outskirts of a certain village to check on a young boy. And Dragon tells Kuma, "If you keep talking about this, you may as well kill me yourself. A child is their parents' weakest spot." And Kuma tells him that he will forget what he saw. This was before Kuma had Bonnie. This was before Kuma knew what it was like to be a parent. And I don't think he knew what he was saying. I mean, he knew, obviously, what he was implying. But he didn't know what Dragon meant. That the weakest point of a parent is their child. And Kuma not talking about it afterwards is out of respect for his friend. But I think it can also be applied to Kuma now with Bonnie. That you don't talk of someone's kid when their kid could be used as a bargaining chip or a threat. And Kuma continues to watch Luffy, who at this point is 16, and he says he's going to use Gum Gum Axe as a super strong enemy, and he's going to set sail and get a crew, but he has to be ready for when someone tries to take them away from him. He won't ever let that happen, but if anyone tries to, he'll give him Gum Gum Axe to the face. And Kuma sees this, thinks, his Den rings, Luffy looks over, but Kuma's gone. And Luffy says that feeling just now gave him chills. And then we see what Kuma was actually here for. He's here to help a pirate girl. He was supposed to blow the lowlives out of the water, so to speak, as the Den puts it. But Kuma saves the injured people, and he's consistently doing this. He's not taking on pirate ships. He's showing up and scaring them, and that's enough. And he continues to write, "Dear Bonnie, the world is full of beauty that can't be captured in photos or picture books. As long as I see your bright smiling face as you experience such wonders for yourself. I long to see your bright smiling face as you experience such wonders for yourself." And then we cut to Sorbet Kingdom, where we will spend the rest of this chapter. And Bonnie is looking every day for the letter, never getting it, and only getting a newspaper. And we see that Alpha is there when the news coup drops it off. And she keeps the letters, shreds them, and never gives them to Bonnie. Despicable, heartless, and I don't care that she's wearing a hot nurse's outfit. I hate her. But she's done this for weeks. So we see that Bonnie is starting to master her fruit. That she's able to use her fruit to kind of distort her body. And Alpha sees this one time, but doesn't think anything of it, and continues to give Bonnie her fake medicine. And Connie, the queen, tells the others that they're hiding Bonnie's ability because a hawk hides their claw. A talented hawk hides its claws. And I was wrong. We're not spending the rest of the chapter on Sorbet. We do cut back to Egghead, where we have Vegapunk, Stussy, and Kuma. A Vegapunk who now has the Apple receiver. He's using Bluetooth. And Stussy brings up the fact that he's going to lose his sense of individuality. She wonders which of them have a more checkered fate. A human that lacks free will or a clone that doesn't. And Vegapunk tells her that she's just as human as everyone else. And Kuma asks what can he expect when his personality is erased. And Vegapunk tells him that right now he's totally obedient to the world government. But he still has morals. But what would he do if he were asked to kill a child? What it means is you'll lose not only your memories, but any empathy or humanity holding you back from fulfilling such a command. That being said, you should retain some degree of free will until the process is fully complete. That'll give you roughly 1 more year. And Kuma begins writing another letter. And he tells Vegapunk, "I'll keep writing till I run out of time. Bonnie deserves to know how I feel. I want to send her a whole lifetime's worth of love before this year's over." And Stussy thinks that's sweet. And Bonnie's almost 9. Kuma knows that. And he puts in his letter, "I don't know when you'll get this letter, but happy birthday, Bonnie. I'm back at Vegapunk's lab. Things are busy around here." And then we cut to Sorbet, where they are throwing Bonnie a birthday party. And they made Bonnie an extra large pizza, but there's still no letter. And she cries over the fact that Kuma said that he would write, and he hasn't. And we see yet again letters being shredded. And we get to see the revolutionaries' perspective that a few other times, including a new one, the revolutionary forces were on the ropes. Kuma swooped in last minute, saved everyone, and left without saying a word. And Dragon tells them, if Kuma wishes not to be followed, we have to respect that. I'm sure he has his reasons for keeping us in the dark. And then we see that Bonnie's all better. It's kind of ambiguous as to how big of a time jump is in between. Potentially a year, 6 months maybe. But she's all better. And Alpha tells her that she has to stay put. And Bonnie tells her that no, Vegapunk said that my disease would be fixed after a year, and that was a year ago. So she's been here for 2 years. And this is when Connie comes out with everyone and tells them she knows that Alpha is a CP. She's a government intelligence agent, and that Bonnie's disease has been cured for a while. And she tells Bonnie, we must be missing something. Why would they keep a perfectly healthy young girl trapped inside for another 6 months? So yes, it is 6 months it's 6 months from her 9th, 6 months till her 10th. And she also tells her, I find it hard to believe that Kuma wouldn't send a single letter. And Connie tells Bonnie that everything is sorted out with Gyogyo, and they're at the port waiting to sail the seas with her and find Kuma. And she tells her that Gyogyo and the rest aren't your average fishermen. They're a strong pack of hooligans. I'm sure the pirates and sea beasts will turn tail once they see them in action. They'll be there to help you find Kuma. And Bonnie leaves the church under the Connie guise, having aged herself up. And this is the first time she's been outside for how long? This is the outside world. There's so much dirt and grass. Look at the sky. There's the sun. And everyone sees this and says that she's walking outside and it's a miracle. There really is a God. And they never thought they'd see this day. And Bonnie reaches the port and makes a break for the ship that is decorated like a pizza. Some of the pirates' names are Gyogyo, Tots, and Potato. So they're all named after food. But Alpha realizes that somehow Bonnie got out of the castle. And they're setting sail, and Alpha uses Geppo to reach the ship. And I think now we get a good grasp of how Bonnie is able to use her fruit the way she does. Because the entire time that we've known Bonnie, she's been using actual attacks, like Distorted Future we saw on Egghead. It's always been a kind of question of how. Like, that's not what the Age fruit should be able to let you do. But the Age fruit lets you turn yourself and others into a future version of yourself. So Distorted Future is a kind of, as the name implies, distorted version of that. But what it is Bonnie flashbacks to a conversation she had with Kuma in which she asks what Nika looked like. And Kuma tells her no one knows, but they say his body was all rubbery and there is no limit to what he could do in a fight. And that is when Bonnie utters the phrase that I think sells why she's able to fight the way she is. Give me a Nika-ish future. Not just give me the future of Nika. Something similar. Something adjacent to Nika is all she wants. And she clobbers Alpha. And then we get text bubble saying, the government would soon receive word that their hostage Bonnie escaped to find her father. Like Luffy and the others, her vessel would gain fame. It would go from a humble fishing boat to an infamous pirate ship in the new era. A young girl heading for the future. Bonnie's entire character, and technically the entire moral of this flashback with Kuma, has been the future. What we do with our own future, what we do for the future of those we care about. And with that being Bonnie's entire fruit, the Age fruit, is really interesting. And again, this chapter was really cool. We get to see Luffy younger than we've seen him as a capable fighter. Like, we saw him as a kid in the Ace Sabo and Luffy flashback, but he was inept. He couldn't really fight. He would use Gum Gum Pistol and wouldn't really be able to hit a target. And through that flashback, we see him progress, and we see Ace and Sabo learn to respect him as a brother. But age 16, Luffy is able to use axe, pistol, and all these abilities to be able to protect his crew. Which obviously we know isn't what happens. Luffy is unable to protect his crew by Kuma's own hand. And Kuma sees this, hears that he wants to be able to protect his crew. And that has to be a realization of Kuma's, like, this kid wants to be something. Kuma wasn't there to hear Luffy tell him that he's going to be the king of the pirates. But just with that attitude that Luffy has, sells it as enough that Luffy knows what he wants and he's not going to give up till he gets that. And he doesn't. Even when the crew split up, Luffy diverts his attention to Ace. It's only when his brother, his family dies, that Luffy is even semi-close to giving up. But he then realized that he has family left. He has his crew. So, okay, I said it before. I know what another detail in the next few chapters is going to be. It's the fact that Kuma breaks the Straw Hats up because he knows that they have what it takes. They're just not strong enough. So, I'm not going to act like I don't know that anymore. I mean, I wasn't really acting like that. But everything we're seeing in these chapters is painting that as a detail that's going to be massive. And I'll end this chapter review here. That was chapter 1101. Good, solid chapter. And I look forward to seeing what's in 1102. Chapter 1102. The Life of Kuma. We saw this chapter pretty much again right where we left it, with a little bit of a time skip, with Bonnie leading the Bonnie Pirates to find Kuma, because they've tracked him down to where they think that he is. And they're also Marines, but they Bonnie just kind of runs past them and ages them all to old geezers. And Kuma can sense Bonnie coming and hears her coming, and he pops out. Because, again, seeing her would break the deal he made with Jupiter. And Bonnie is on her ship afterwards saying, if we're going to take it slow, then I want to look for Nika too. Imagine Daddy's face when I tell him I found Nika at so-and-so island. Don't you think he will be thrilled? And then the more ongoing part of this chapter, we get updates on where Luffy is in his journey. When this happens, Luffy had just taken down the All-Around Pirates. He had just gotten his bounty of 30 million berry. And it looks like Sabo is reading the newspaper and telling Dragon's telling Sabo that he's going to go to Logtown. Smoker's seeing this, and while Sabo tells Dragon that Smoker's the head honcho at Logtown, and in a really, really cute panel, Ace is like, Jinbei, guess whose kid brother's on this bounty poster? And Jinbei is like, what the fuck, a kid like that took down Arlong? And Ace is like, that's right, he's my kid brother. And it's just really cute, because, like, Ace loves Luffy. We didn't really get to see it from Ace's side, but these brothers have such a love for each other. And Kuma is just on a ship thinking that it's a curious twist of fate that Dragon would have a son that would become a pirate. And then we see Bonnie's crew with their ironclad rules of piracy. Plunder whatever you want from the bad guys. Rob them blind, and don't help a soul unless they really need it. And Bonnie applies a little makeup to look like an adult, which makes sense why her lipstick is so tiny. And she also gets an ear or the face piercing so that Kuma will recognize her with something on her cheek. And Kuma shows up to Egghead to see all the Pacifista. And he calls them unsettling. And their progress is going right along with his. And Kuma tells Vegapunk that Dragon has a son, and that they basically have a heart-to-heart about how it sounds like Nika. And we get a play-by-play of every time that Kuma showed up during pre-time skip. So we get to see him show up to Thriller Bark, where he tells them that the government gave him special orders to wipe them all out, but if he takes them Luffy's head, it should be fine. And the crew tell him no, and Kuma uses Ursa's shock. We saw this all happen way back. And then we see Zoro tell Kuma that Luffy's going to be the man who's going to become king of the pirates. And then we see Kuma expel all of Luffy's pain. And Kuma even says this much damage should be enough to knock even me out. So that just shows, like, Luffy is just that strong. And as we all know, Zoro jumped right into it. We don't even get to see it from Kuma's perspective. All we hear is Kuma saying, he has exceptional friends. He just as I'd expect of your son, Dragon. And then we cut to Sabati when everything was going on there. Kuma's sailing, and he gets news that they are calling all 7 warlords because the flag bearer of the new era, Portgas D. Ace, has public execution date that has been set. And Kuma is thinking, we're having a war with the Whitebeard pirates. And he tells them that he will be there before the execution date. And as we know, Bonnie is on Sabati. So it's almost like they're playing this cat and mouse game where he wants to be around Bonnie, but he doesn't want to, he doesn't want Bonnie to see him. And he says that this is the last time that he'll see her face, and he wants her to become a truly indomitable pirate. And then, as he's leaving, he hears news that pirate just hit a celestial dragon! They'll send a warship from Navy HQ! And he realizes that it's the human shop, which, again, slavery is a thing Kuma has a big thing against. and he goes up to the roof and sees that it is Luffy. Even after making the comment that being so close to Navy HQ, it's practically suicide. And he sees that Luffy did it to protect a fishman. And he says that no one has done anything this bold for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's treason. And again, we get to see every Straw Hat reaction to it happening, and just the simple fact that Kuma was there for it. And then we get to see Kuma showing up for the fight against the Pacifista versus the Straw Hats. Zoro, pop, 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 gone. All this time, he's thinking, Dragon, Eva-chan, I hope you can forgive me. I didn't mean to desert you without a word. At least I can leave my own quiet mark on this world through Bonnie and this young boy. Their future will be the only legacy I leave behind. And Luffy's lamenting that he couldn't save any of his crew, which, like we went over last chapter, he was training specifically so that he could protect his crew. And Kuma is thinking to himself, you've got it wrong. I'm just showing you the level you have to be in the new world. You and your friends aren't ready yet. Don't go there. After all, you will someday save the world. And that's when he pops Luffy to Amazon Lily. Which now in hindsight, he could have done on purpose, knowing that Amazon Lily was so close to Marineford and Impel Down that Luffy could do something. But he could have sent him closer, but I think it was also a thing that he wanted Luffy to build allies, like he did with Hancock. Because without his allies that he got, without Buggy from Impel Down, without Crocodile, without Hancock fighting back against the government for Luffy, Marineford wouldn't have gone the way it did. Marineford would have been way worse. So everything Kuma did, he did for a reason. And Jupiter wants Egghead, Jesus. I'm always tired recording these. He wants Vegapunk to install a self-destruct, which even though Jupiter has the highest priority on the chain, Vegapunk doesn't want to do. And Jupiter straight up says, I'm not answering that. I'm not taking the opinions of I'm not listening to the opinions of a scientist for hire. And Vegapunk asks if he can install a little bit of, just leave a little bit of Kuma's personality intact. And Jupiter just says, no, I've given the order, Vegapunk. Erase his individuality completely. Make sure no trace of his humanity remains. You won't be forgiven if you don't. Remember, I too am a man of science. Any attempts to deceive me will fail. And Kuma hears this and tells Vegapunk that he gets it. He understands, and then that phone hangs up. And Vegapunk and Kuma have this heart-to-heart. All right, then. Today's the day to erase your sense of individuality. Kuma, it's only been 2 years, but it was fun. I suppose it was. It's looking like your first assignment will be a battle with the Whitebeard Pirates. I've been asked to prepare a battalion of your clone soldiers for that, too. Once it's over and done with, there's something I'd like you to program me to do. Protect the ship of the Straw Hat Pirates? Just until one of them returns. I'd like to be a stubborn guardian for their home, since I won't be able to witness their continued growth. What kind of future are you dreaming up for that boy? His actions have really moved me. I know Nika is meant to be a legend, but it'd be great if there was really a warrior out there putting smiles on faces, using the rhythm of liberation, the rhythm I taught Bonnie. If there's a hero out there who will change these seas one day, I believe it'll be him. A revolutionary placing their hopes on a pirate, eh? You're backing quite the dark horse. That unorthodox thinking is proof of your humanity. Alright, before we begin, remember to push out those memories from my research. A promise is a promise, after all. And Kuma does exactly that. He pushes out all of his memories. And Vegapunk asks, does this effectively erase your memories? And Kuma responds, no. Think of it as a copy. It will disappear when it's touched, though. And Vegapunk tells him, don't fret. I've designed a system that will allow me to take a peek without touching it. Place it in there. And it's in this little device that, again, it's for Vegapunk to take peeks into. And Vegapunk has to check it just to make sure everything worked. And Kuma says this as this is happening. So this is my life. I wonder how many people have been harmed or troubled by my actions. And Vegapunk tells him, troubled? Living is nothing without trouble, wouldn't you say? And then we get a speedrun of these last few chapters that we've seen. We see Kuma's parents, we've seen Eva, we see Ginny, we see Young Dragon, we see the rest of the Revolutionaries, we've seen Ginny, we've seen Bonnie, we see Vegapunk, and all of the time they are saying his name in an excited and happy way. And Vegapunk tells Kuma, your life hasn't caused anyone harm or trouble, but your death will pain everyone who loves you. Listen well, Kuma. You too are a hero, not only for Bonnie, but for everyone you've ever met. And Kuma asks him just to one last thing. And Vegapunk tells him, yeah, I know. And then we see everyone that works at Egghead, Sentomaru and Vegapunk, are all somber as Vegapunk pulls the switch. And we hear Kuma's last request. Thank you for saving Bonnie's life. If you see her again, could you tell her something for me? Please wish her a happy 10th birthday. And we cut back to current Egghead with Bonnie sobbing with the memory paw gone. With the teaser text for the next chapter, his daughter is the only thing in his heart. Holy shit, that was a good chapter. I love how we get all of pre-time skip Luffy through Vegapunk and Kuma's perspective. Mostly just Kuma. And it's just really touching. Again, we see Ace this chapter where he's just excited for his brother to see that his brother has progressed that much. We get to see, again, the collage of everyone that Kuma has touched in his life. And like Vegapunk says, he wasn't a stain, he wasn't trouble, but his death will be painful for everyone. And just down to the end where he just wants Kuma just wants Vegapunk to wish Bonnie a happy 10th birthday. And we have to remember back to the beginning of Egghead, where Bonnie had this vendetta against Vegapunk for killing her father. And now you can kind of understand why. You can blame Vegapunk for it. Vegapunk's the one who okayed it all. But it was all under the thumb of Jupiter. Jupiter's the one who kept shooting down Vegapunk's request for humanity. Requests for one last kindness. And Vegapunk did that. Whether it be against Jupiter's wishes or not, Vegapunk let Kuma protect the Thousand Sunny during the time skip. And I cannot believe that I'm about to say this. This is the first chapter of a manga in which I have cried reading. I teared up actually reading it, and several times through my walkthrough, I don't know if you could hear it in my voice, I teared up. At the very end, I did just straight up cry. Not a sob, a cry. And that just talks about or speaks of the sheer skill that Oda has at writing emotional stuff. Like, most of the stuff is stuff that we could kind of imply, but the fact that we get it in such a lens, Oda knows perfectly how to write it, and it's just goddamned amazing. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this chapter. I loved it. Not much else I can say. It was really fucking good. But yeah, next up is going to be 1103. We'll see how this goes. 1103 brings us back to the semi-present with the chapter titled I'm So Sorry, Daddy. And it starts with Bonnie coming out of the room in which she saw everything. Everything we just went through for the last how many chapters Bonnie saw in an instant. So Kuma had made the promise with Vegapunk, obviously, that Vegapunk was not supposed to let Bonnie know the truth. And now that that truth has been broken, Vegapunk is sorry, but Bonnie hugs him and apologizes. And then Egghead Man, Vegapunk, gives Bonnie the gift that Kuma wanted him to give her. And it's a sapphire necklace shaped like the sun. And he said it was a protective charm, but Vegapunk really doesn't get how. And he also says it's hard to believe what that kid has become in only 2 years, talking about Luffy. And Vegapunk says that fate is a strange thing because Luffy and Bonnie showed up at the same time. A lot has happened on Egghead since you've been in that room. The Straw Hat crew saved me just now, in fact. I'll explain everything. We can meet up with them when things have calmed down. I'm sorry for everything, Bonnie. Now you know how worthless I am, a mere scientist for hire, following his orders. And Bonnie retorts, you're wrong. The real villain is him. Speaking of Jay Garcia, as we get back to the present, with all of the Marines aiming their rifles at her. And Saturn tells her that Kuma is truly dead. And we see that everyone is in a rough spot. Sanji, Egghead Man, Vegapunk, and Frankie are all pinned to the ground. Luffy's out of energy. And Atlas can't even move. Sentomaru has been tied up. And Kizaru is laid out flat. And we get the status report that they don't really know what's all happening because it's kind of hard to communicate with limited soldiers. And we get a cut to Dragon, where he asks Eva, assuming there's a trace of Kuma in there, where would his instincts take him, Eva? And Eva tells him, if it was me, I would store Marriage Va for some payback. But as we know, Kuma is different. And what we see next is amazing. Bonnie tries to use Distorted Future again, Nika-ish future. And Jupiter legitimately is shocked by this. And Bonnie falls and almost passes out, and her ability stops working. And Saturn tells her that you don't understand its meaning. How pathetic. Where did that... And, sorry, I'm all over the place. He asks how she knows that name, and that being Kuma's daughter, it kind of makes sense. But she doesn't understand the name. Even though... Luffy's, right there. No one's drawn the connection between Nika and Luffy. We are operating at a informational disadvantage. The characters that we are following don't know what the elders do. And that's really, really interesting. But Luffy miraculously has a shit ton of food around him. He's just eating. And we get a panel of Kizaru sitting up. Which when we saw him, he was laying down on his back, kind of, defeated. But now he's up. So I'm kind of wondering if Kizaru did some stuff. Although there is just the odds that it's just a food materializer that just deposited food. But then we get some exposition on Bonnie's fruit, which I wondered what it was. And I'll read it as Jupiter. Bonnie, you owe that power of yours to me. We conducted experiments to determine whether extract infusions would grant a baby an ability without feeding them the fruit normally. It was a success, but the fruit itself is useless now. Its ability can transform you into a state that matches any future perceived as to be possible. But that means the possibilities become limited as your future becomes more certain. As you uncover the truth, Nika is just an impossible myth you wanted to believe in. And Bonnie tries to argue back that Nika's real. I've been looking for him to save Dad, ever since you turned him into a cyborg slave. And Jupiter fires back with, yet your sudden weakening proves you starting to doubt whether his existence is possible. Your father just passed on a worthless buccaneer legend. He told me he wanted to save people just like Nika once. Your mother being brought to the Holy Land to be wife number 8. It's ironic, really. She ended up being part of my drug experiments. Like the other failures, she developed Sapphire Scale. I knew the results were poor, but to think the condition passed on to the child as well. And we cut to the harbor, where something impacts. Bonnie says everything was Jupiter's fault. And Saturn, sometimes I've been saying Jupiter, Saturn. And Vegapunk fires back with, those sapphire scales are tore Kuma's family apart. They're the reason he threw his life away. You used it as a bargaining chip where you were responsible the entire time? And Saturn responds, look at it from my perspective. Do you comprehend the feeling of insects you step on? Of course not. And we get to see what happened at the harbor. Kuma has crashed. Everyone thinks it's a pacifista until they see his palms. He has the paws. They start unloading firing shots. They call to the middle of the island. They tell them, the ex-warlord of the sea, Bartholomew Kuma, has made landfall. He's heading straight for the center of the island. Our authority chips aren't working. We can't stop him. And Jay just says, what a fiasco. What could Kuma possibly be here for? And Bonnie gives up. I can't hold on. I'm so scared. And Vegapunk asks, he's here how? And they are all told, stop him. Fire at will. Yes, sir. And Bonnie says, I can't force myself to speak anymore. Daddy, it feels like my heart is shattering. We see that Kuma is being hit by blow after blow, cannon after cannon, bullet after bullet, and yet he remains steadfast. At this point, I think I'd be better off dead. This is it. I'm so sorry, Daddy. And Kuma continues to blitz as Jay tells them, all that shrieking is unbearably noisy. You insufferable waif. Everyone, blow her head off. And all of the Marines take aim, but all they see is Kuma as he delivers massive blasts to each. And Bonnie passes out right as Kuma arrives, and she says, you fought really hard for me to live. But before she's allowed to finish that thought, Kuma takes a blow from Saturn, grabs Saturn's leg, armament hockey in one fist, pulls back, and goes to punch at this insufferable asshole that we have been wanting to see get his face blasted in for months now. Holy fuck, that was a good chapter. Obviously doesn't have as much emotion as the flashback. So it's a nice return to action, I guess. But even then, the entire chapter isn't action till the end. And it's like intercut with Kuma, but like, I think this chapter just works to get us back to the status quo of what is currently happening on Egghead. Cause like, it's been a while. We've just kind of gotten like limited looks at what has been occurring, but this right here is fucking massive. There's not much I can say about this chapter. It was just really good. I liked it. Yeah, this is gonna be a shorter chapter, but next up is 1104. So yeah, let's finish this. Let's finish this leg of the One Piece catch-up together. Chapter 1104. Thank you, Daddy of One Piece. This is like the biggest example of it. Picks up right where the other chapter left off. Kuma's mid-swing. And Jupiter, Saturn, fucking Jay Garcia has like a straight-up flashback to meeting Kuma when he was a kid. And we get a flashback of everything that Kuma's went through in his flashback. And then we get the revelation that they activated Kuma's self-destruct mechanism days ago. And then we get the best punch in the fucking series. Fuck Red Rock. Fuck punching the goddamn piece of shit back in his body. Fuck every punch before. This punch is my favorite. This is Kuma blasting Agorase in the face. And the motherfucker feels it. He flies back. Saturn is tanked. And when this happens, everyone's like the hockey is what I was calling it earlier. The massive Conquerors hockey that everyone was under kind of lets up. And Kuma kind of stops moving as everyone else gets ready. And they're running around trying to get everyone to safety. While Vegapunk thinks, what is the meaning of this? That's a good question. The truth is, I didn't install a traditional self-destruct mechanism. I couldn't bear the idea of making you into a bomb, knowing how those bastards would take full advantage of that. But I still kept my word. I just used a different kind of failsafe. And he activated it. I programmed it to shut down your body completely. Between that and the loss of your individuality, you should be nothing more than a vegetable now, incapable of receiving orders. Even accounting for Bonnie's presence here, you shouldn't have been able to reach us. So how are you still moving? This almost seems beyond science. can't be what I'm thinking, can it? The Buccaneers were said to have had special characteristics beyond their strong bodies. After all, your people once... And we get interrupted by that with Kizaru saying, "It's over, isn't it?" And Sentomaru was thinking to himself that Kuma did it. And the Marines are fucking... They are wilding out. And Luffy disappeared before they could detain him. And one Marine strip says that they cannot report such a fucking failure. And Bonnie de-ages herself. And she tells Kuma, "I saw your memories. Mommy seemed like an amazing woman. And I saw how you actually wrote me lots and lots of letters. That made me so happy. I don't care if everyone else calls you a tyrant. Because I know there's no one kinder than my dad. To me, you're the coolest person in the world. I'll never forget that." And with that, Saturn gets back up. And he's approaching. And he is beaten. He has bloody nose. His horn is broken. His arm is fucked. And Vegapunk takes responsibility for the self-destruct mechanism not being what they wanted. And then Garcia says, "I see. As usual, to err is human. How short-sighted. You gentlemen have outlived your usefulness. Farewell." And he goes for an attack. And Sanji's able to deflect an attack from a Gorosei. So earlier, when the Straw Hats got straight clapped, fluke, straight up coinky dink. This is the Straw Hats working at peak efficiency here, because Frankie hits the goddamn Gorosei with a Frankie Radical Beam right through his chest. And after that, Kizaru blitzes Frankie, knocks him away, and this is where we get some big stuff. Atlas is carrying Kuma away because Kuma can't move himself. And this is Kizaru and fucking Saturn against everyone who's currently here. Plus a Buster Call. Remember, this is like a 10 times Buster Call. This is massive. But one thing I want to talk about here is Kizaru's line of, "I should have brought a darker pair of shades. I'm going to embarrass myself at this rate." I don't think I'm in like the minority here, in which Kizaru is definitely feeling stuff. He's definitely feeling emotions. Sentomaru is primarily Vegapunk's bodyguard, as we know. But he also has a sort of loyalty to Kizaru. So, with Kizaru, Sentomaru, Vegapunk, Bonnie, Kuma, all being here, this is like Emotion City. These guys knew each other for 2 years, maybe. But they all, like I said a few chapters ago, they became a sort of family. And you can't just turn against a family like this with intent to kill. But, like Kizaru said, they sent him to do the job and kill Vegapunk because if it was going to be anyone, it should have been Kizaru, who needs the emotional closure. So, the question is really, has Kizaru fully given up on his family, on his memories, and is he just a Navy dog? Or are we going to see Kizaru turn around and fight with the Straw Hats? I doubt that. But I do think Kizaru is the biggest independent faction, because he has his own motives. But like Ryokyugu, he is a die-hard absolute justice kind of guy. We know that Fujitora is more on the lax side of justice. But we don't know what Kizaru's justice is. Everyone has been calling it lazy justice. To do justice when you can. Like, when you feel up to it. But what if Kizaru's justice is something more similar to Fujitora's? Where he takes into consideration, like, morals and ethics of the people doing it. And in that case, maybe the pirates aren't the worst. Like, again, we saw him straight blitz the entirety of the Straw Hats and the Supernovas 2 years ago. But does that really hold? Everything he's done has been under, like, orders of higher-ups. What if he just kind of unclicks his own chain and decides, you know what, I'm going to do my own thing? That would be fucking wild, dude. Wild! But, yeah, this is going to be interesting, because we got a Buster Call coming in, and as our asshole of a fucking Gorosei puts it, a traitor who studied the taboo secrets of the world, a survivor of a bloodline that should be extinct, and a pirate who awakened the power of that ancient god. This island has been completely infested. I feel like that really puts in perspective what we're about to see come the Egghead incident. So, yeah. Again, top priority, as Vegapunk says, this chapter is to escape the island and go wherever we need. Elbaf seems most likely. So, yeah. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. I'm not gonna talk about this one too much. It's a good chapter. All these chapters are good. It's Oda. What do you expect? But, I cannot wait to see what happens next. The Forces of Justice loom as well is the teaser text for the next chapter. So, yeah, I'm gonna let this video go, but in the words of Nanba, I think her name was, from Amazon Lily, love is a hurricane. And yeah. See you guys next time. This is the first video of 2024. I'm gonna put this at the end. This is the first video of 2024, and don't get me wrong, I didn't upload a lot last year, and I know. I'm not gonna make the promise I'll upload more this year, but I'm hoping to get more consistent. But yeah. Here's the new year. Here's the new One Piece. Here's the 2024 being a year in which we see a Gorosei, maybe not killed, but knocked out, maybe. Until next time, stay safe, have fun, and read more manga. Okay, guys. Bye.